the real takeaway for me is technology, process, and customer service can drive superior outcomes. And I think for all of us in the energy industry, that's what we need to strive for, is how do we support companies and businesses around the world to realize amazing outcomes at scale by giving them the confidence with data and intelligence, inspiring them to act because they feel in control, and then ensuring that that pulls through to amazing projects supported by incredible customer experience, because we have to all want to do this, and the outcomes are amazing when we get it right. But one bad project can leave a bad taste in someone's mouth. So we need to make sure as an industry, every project is absolutely incredible, and that the cost savings are awesome, and that there's a profitability realized is incredible, the sustainability metrics work, the resilience is achieved, because then it'll inspire more action, more scale. I'm not going to go out and buy more cars, but I would based on that experience.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Excited to dig in today. Gareth has some exciting news, an exciting addition to the family that we'll be digging into here shortly. But we're recording here at the end of January. Finally got some rain here in Southern California, depending on where you were, 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches of rain, which is very much needed. I was joking with Gareth that yesterday morning, I believe, was the very first time that I was walking Pierce, my son, to school at his new school that he's been at for over 6 months. First time walking in the rain, which is quite a stark reminder. But I just took a quick look, and as of 2 hours ago, the Palisades fire is at 95% containment, and the Eaton fire is at 99% containment. And I'm sure this rain helped. And so, again, hearts and shout out goes to everybody directly impacted by those fires. But I think hopefully the worst is behind us in those ones. But Gareth, let's dig into some exciting news on your front. What joined the family this weekend?
I'd say just before we do that, I think none of us probably ever had heard of Watch Duty, the app, until a few weeks ago. So mega shout out to Watch Duty. And I think for anyone who's worried about fires, the app is amazing. It's free, but they welcome donations because it's non-for-profit. And I'd say it's highly, highly valuable, and it's real-time intelligence. And I think what's been super inspiring over the last few weeks is seeing how quickly a bunch of these fires have been addressed in real time. We had one that was just across the street and could have got pretty bad, but within minutes there was fire trucks, helicopters, the works. So I think the severity and the realness of it all became very apparent for everyone here in California. But anyone who is essentially west of the Mississippi, the app is an amazingly powerful tool, and definitely check it out. Coming back to the new edition, Dan, I think, we've talked about this for several years because we're both in the same boat of being big circular economy people and believing in not just buying stuff for the sake of it and using stuff to its max potential. And so I've been driving a Honda Ridgeline 2008 for the last 15 years. It's got over 300,000 kilometers on it. It's been an absolute workhorse. It's been bulletproof, never given me a problem. But I decided need to bring myself into the current generation, live by what I preach, and ultimately added a Ford F-150 Lightning to the family.
Yeah, I know you've been talking about this for a while and deliberating over which path you should go down, and we'll dig into that here in a second. Super happy to see that, and something that like I'm in a similar boat, not quite as many miles on ours, but making the consideration on where to go. So talk us through the kind of the process that you went through, and how did you land on the Lightning? And I think there's a lot of similarities that we'll dig into on kind of the steps that you had to take to the steps that business leaders have to take when they're considering an on-site energy system, and arguably an even more compounded when you think about it across dozens or hundreds of facilities. But take us to the beginning on kind of where'd you start?
Yeah, I think I had a bit of apprehension actually, because I haven't bought a vehicle in a very long time, to a point where Ethan, our son, was super stoked because he's never had a new car. And so I involved him in the whole process, and he came along to the dealership and did some research with me and was part of the negotiation. So that was cool for him to see. And I think ultimately why we settled on the F-150 Lightning is super adventurous family, as you all know. We need lots of room, lots of practicality for camping, skiing, biking. And when I started doing some research, even though I'd test driven a Rivian previously, one of our friends, Zach at Cleantech San Diego, who we've had on the podcast in the past, got to drive his and got to try a few of the sort of fuel trucks. Like, I wasn't stuck on having to go electric, but I wanted something that was fuel economic, that aligned with our mission and our vision, that was practical, and that then, actually could deliver on promises. And I think when I started doing some research, the F-150, it qualified for all the rebates. It had a 300 plus mile range, which for our big road trips was super important. It's got this massive frunk. For anyone who hasn't heard the term frunk, I'm super impressed with the fact that where the engine used to be is now a massive trunk, essentially. It's got a really good tailgate, obviously, for all our gear in the back. And then it drove so smooth compared to the old Honda. This thing, electric, big, and it drove super smooth. I loved it as soon as I got in it. But I wouldn't have got in it without doing the research. And I think part of the reason why we wanted to record this podcast is because there are so many parallels. I had some apprehension going into it because you hear about the sleazy car salespeople and the bad processes. But I was actually blown away by how impressive the sales process was with Ford. But I wouldn't have ended up at the Ford dealership without having done some initial research myself, comparing different vehicles, fuel, hybrid, electric, different ranges, different performance specs. And ultimately, what I realized is having the power of tech and the power of data and intelligence at our fingertips puts you in a position of power when you go in to have these discussions, because you're not going in and having someone selling you something you don't necessarily want. You're going in with an idea of knowing what you want, why you want it, what the price point should be. And so I think we see that a lot on the energy side, don't we, Dan?
Yeah, it's something as you were describing it, I was thinking through the fact that the automotive industry is a pretty well seasoned industry. I mean, it's been around for over 100 years, and no surprise that over the last 30 years, there's as the internet has taken hold of every aspect of our lives, that it's done so within the automotive industry. And you've got companies like Kelley Blue Book and Carfax and JD Power that are providing you all these reviews. And so you've got this kind of plethora of information, and you as a consumer can go and navigate that. And we're at the very early stages of that in the energy industry, and certainly on-site energy, because it is such a fragmented market, similar to the automotive industry. And before all these tools on the automotive space, that's why people didn't like it, because of the information asymmetry. They felt that they didn't know what a Ford F-150 should cost, and well, should I lease or should I buy it outright? And what are the trade-offs and advantages and disadvantages of that? But you came in a lot more informed, and so talk us through just like mentally what that allowed you to do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it definitely puts you in a position of more confidence, more trust in the process. And you get to go in and be on the front foot and describe exactly what you want and why you want it. And then the budget that you had in mind. And then you can work from there. And I think the reality of what we see in the energy sector and why we're so passionate about this topic is today that information and understanding of what business leaders actually want from an energy system isn't readily available. It's a big part of the podcast, big part of the platform is how do we provide in a early industrial cycle of deploying these systems, all that data, all that intelligence, all the comparisons, who performs well, who doesn't, what are the trade-offs of different technologies, what system is actually right for me. Most buyers today are going into that scenario on the back foot because they don't know any of those answers. And so they're reliant on a developer or a supplier or even to an extent a consultant telling them what they need and want which may align more with the developer's interest than their own. And so I think if we bring it back to the car situation, I don't think any of us would feel comfortable just walking into a random dealership and saying, I want a car, tell me which one's right for me. And you're walking out with a soft top convertible and you actually wanted a truck or a 4x4. And so that's the reality where the industry's at today, is people are walking out of the dealership with a system that didn't match their desired needs, wants, and intentions. And they felt a bit out of control in the process, and they didn't know what questions to ask. They didn't know where the industry stood. And so it's hard to push back.
And I think that's where the automotive industry was years ago, where people also didn't necessarily know what the going rate was for a car. Like, and it was one thing, a fresh, brand new car off the lot, and it's a whole different thing when you start to account for these used systems and or used cars. There's so many more variables that come into the mix. And I mean, we just ran into this a couple of days ago. I met a gentleman, and he was sharing with me kind of the size of his system and what they're looking for, and kind of looking to me for some benchmarking. And it looks like the quote that he had in hand was quite a bit more expensive, roughly 25% more expensive than what we're seeing from other similar size systems. And of course, there's nuances that need to be fleshed out there. But I think that type of benchmarking and understanding of what is customary at this point in time in that particular region. As you were describing the car experience, I was thinking back to, I think it was late 2020, 2021. There was this huge kind of shortage of vehicles. I remember hearing about a Toyota 4Runners going for way over, what people bought them for. And that was like a whole different time. And so being able to track how things change over time as well. You got your F-150 Lightning here in early January 2025, probably very different than a year ago, 18 months ago, when you might have had to wait 6 months to get it.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And so I think we've really touched on understanding what you want. But then even if you know what you want, you like to touch it, you like to feel it, you like to test drive it. So I think the second part of the buying process was all about the test drive. And what I was really pleasantly surprised about with the truck buying experience is I didn't have to go out with a accompanying staff member. Literally, I gave them my insurance card and they said, borrow it for the afternoon. And off I went. And I did all our chores, all our errands, drove Ethan to soccer, hung out with the family. We got to all experience it. And it was painless. It was seamless. And it got me really thinking about how then we use technology on the VECKTA side to help customers test drive their systems. It's all well and good believing that you want an on-site energy system and hoping that maybe solar and batteries might help you, or a EV charger or a gas turbine for backup. But until you actually run the analytics and you start touching and feeling the solution, we're not going to go and build a system and test drive it in this scenario. So we have to do it in a really efficient way. And I think that's where we can really then inspire the confidence. Because once you actually see the system virtually running, you see the financial paybacks, you see the combination of technologies that aligns with your interests, you then actually feel super excited about it.
And as you're describing, I agree with you. You can't really put up a test solar array on your roof by any means, but you can scenario plan.
Yeah.
And you can answer some of those what if questions. What if my demand charges go down? Or what if my utility rate escalates at a different rate than what we were anticipating? Similar to your what if scenarios. Well, what is this like if I drive it on a dirt road? Or is this actually going to hold 3 bikes or 6 bikes if we're traveling with some friends? You can actually go and test drive those, and that's really what we're looking to support clients do is answering some of those what if questions, so that they can feel comfortable that, okay, within the bounds of these realm of possibilities, how is this going to perform from an economic perspective, and how is it going to perform from an actual production perspective? And so once you feel comfortable within kind of the bounds of all the different in your case, activities that you're looking to do, or in the case of an on-site energy system, within the bounds of the economics and performance, then it comes time to actually go and pull the trigger. And so what you had to make a decision on Do you buy? Do you lease?
Yeah,
What are the different commercial models? And then ultimately, do you get it in the color that was available to you at the local dealer, or do you wait and go find it elsewhere? What was that like?
that's right. So like we've understood what we want, we've test driven it, then we get into that options analysis. And for us, it was around obviously trim type, options, color, financing. And yeah, we ultimately ended up waiting because we wanted a different color and things like that. But I think the most important thing was actually in real time looking at the different financial implications. And this is huge on the energy side, but even on the car buying side, what would be my monthly cost if I was to buy it and own it? What would be the difference if I put down a bigger down deposit? Um, what rebates were available? And it ended up being there was actually more rebates available through the leasing program than there was through the buying program, which I was surprised at. And then the leasing program, the rates were half the price of what the ultimate financing. So for all of these reasons, we ended up leasing 3-year lease, 0% financing, ability to buy it out or give it back after 3 years. And particularly as the energy industry is moving quite quickly, I wanted that optionality. And on the energy side, it would be the same. Do we want to own this asset and be responsible for operating it, maintaining it? Do we have any preferences around cost of capital? Do we have better cost of capital than someone else? Versus, do we want someone else to finance it, build it, own it, operate it, either through energy as a service or a lease agreement? What happens at the end of that agreement? Do I own it? Do I have to give it back? What's the rate at which I could own it? And so all of these scenarios are super interesting. And it was amazing to see the parallels between just me going through it on a personal level and trying to crunch the numbers and having to run my own spreadsheets, and then thinking about how we've managed to automate that whole process for our customers as they're thinking through how should I think about buying this energy system. So it's super cool to actually go through that and actually feel like you're coming out of it with a scenario which aligns with your interests. Yeah.
And seeing the photos and talking to you about it, I'm not picking up any buyer's remorse or anything. Only extreme buyer's excitement.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's because you went through the pre-work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and you get into that negotiation and contracting process, don't you? And I think when buying a car, it doesn't feel real until you actually sign that paperwork. And there's obviously steps along the way. I had to review the contract. As you know, I'm not like a hyper details data guy. And so reading through this dry contract, making sure I wasn't signing my life away was a bit nerve wracking. But it's exactly the same process of buying that energy system, making sure that we fine tune and make sure we're accepting terms and conditions that match our needs, wants, and expectations. And so in the car case, it was that warranties were incredible, like 8-year powertrain warranty and battery. That I was super nervous about the battery. What happens if something happened to it? Would I have to replace it? But 8 years on stuff like that, all the financing details laid out. And when we think about buying an energy system, we want to make sure that we're really mitigating our risks and maximizing our value. And we can only do that if we know what questions to ask of the developers. And the developers have a very clear scope of work against which to price against. And so it's really important that we're using industry best practices, that we're having people work with us to ensure that we're asking and agreeing to the right terms and conditions, because these are long-term agreements, and then ultimately locking in on a deal that we're all super excited about. And so for me, I was like real-time texting and calling with the dealer to land on a deal we wanted. On the on-site energy systems side of it, it doesn't necessarily happen that quickly, but we want that curated buying process, because we don't want people to just be blindly receiving Excel spreadsheets with numbers and then you just make a decision purely based on dollars and cents. But it might be with the worst developer in the market, or it might be with someone who just did a bad past project. So we want to make sure that we're going with a reputable developer, someone that we're mission aligned with, that we want to be in a partnership with for many years, and that we trust is going to actually deliver as promised. And so it was really cool seeing those synergies.
Yeah, and I don't think, even though these energy systems are a couple orders of magnitude greater in kind of size, if you will, from a cost perspective, granted, we're talking an individual family here versus a large corporation, but you don't have to scale the time in which it takes to make these decisions the same way. So if yours was kind of from the time you kicked off your real deep investigation, I know you've been thinking about it for a while and you drove a Rivian and it's been on your mind, but real deep investigation, let's say maybe it was a week or 2 week process, that doesn't need to turn into a 20 or 200 week process for a business to work through this. Like there are efficiencies that can come through making these types of decisions, and that's exactly what we're looking to support with. So super happy for you.
Thanks.
Eager to get in there and take it for a spin and ride in it myself. It looks awesome. I love the pictures. So excited for when I see you here in a week or two.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And I think the real takeaway for me is technology, process, and customer service can drive superior outcomes. And I think for all of us in the energy industry, that's what we need to strive for, is how do we support companies and businesses around the world to realize amazing outcomes at scale by giving them the confidence with data and intelligence, inspiring them to act because they feel in control, and then ensuring that pulls through to amazing projects supported by incredible customer experience, because we have to all want to do this, and the outcomes are amazing when we get it right. But one bad project can leave a bad taste in someone's mouth. So we need to make sure as an industry, every project is absolutely incredible, and that the cost savings are awesome, and that there's a profitability realized is incredible, the sustainability metrics work, the resilience is achieved, because then it'll inspire more action, more scale. I'm not going to go out and buy more cars, but I would based on that experience.
Love it. Well, excited for you, and more to come. We'll have to hear about some of the adventures in the new pickup.
All right, love it. We receive a lot of questions from business leaders around the world wanting to learn more about the energy transition, what is possible, and where to start. So to help you stay informed and up to date on best practices, opportunities, risks, and success stories, we created an industry newsfeed at VECKTA.com/news with all our podcasts, blogs, and newsletter. Check it out and connect with Dan, myself, and the VECKTA team to learn more. Cheers and have a good one.